Dr. David Jockers, welcome to the DIY Detox Summit.
Absolutely, Bridget. Great to be on with you. Really glad that you're doing a summit like this, helping people to figure out how to cleanse, detoxify their body at home. So really good stuff.
Yeah, and you've got a great way to approach it, which is the topic of fasting. I know you're also an expert at ketogenic diet, so maybe we'll hit that a bit. Fasting is very traditional modality, right? That's been around thousands and thousands of years, but I think it's still kind of misunderstood. Probably people are curious, but don't know what's safe and what it actually does, that kind of a thing. So excited to have you on.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I always say fasting is the most ancient, inexpensive, and perhaps the most powerful healing strategy known to mankind.
Wow. Okay. That's a good testimonial. So let me just start with, how would you define fasting?
Yeah, so fasting basically is just going without food. All of us do it. If we're sleeping at night, however long you're sleeping, 6-8 hours or whatever, you're going without food. So basically it's just going for a period of time without food. Now, there's a lot of different ways of fasting and extended fasting and going certain periods of time without food that can have more benefits than others. But all of us have fasted at some point because, again, we sleep. So we can break it into like intermittent fasting and extended fasting. So intermittent fasting, I think about that as basically avoiding food or just, at least a very, very calorie restricted model, because you can do a partial fast as well, for 2 days or less, 48 hours or less. And that would be in this category of intermittent fasting. And within that, there's a lot of popular strategies. Like I'll tell people to get started with a simple fast, which is like 12 hours between your last meal and your first meal. So if you finish dinner at 6 p.m., you would wait till 6 a.m. the next morning before you would, consume anything with calories. It's called a simple fast. We can bump it up to 14 hours. I call that the brunch fast. Okay, 14 hours without food. Now you can drink water. Water is great. You hydrate your body well. In fact, I always recommend that when you wake up, really hydrate well. You can even do salts and take in like some electrolytes. We're just trying to avoid, a good amount of calories, ideally no calories during that period of time to get the best benefits. And then you can go up to 16 hours, so 16-8, which is a really common intermittent fasting strategy. Some people do 18-6, 18 hours where we're fasting, 6 hours where we're eating. So we might eat 2 meals in like a 6-hour eating window. We might do like a 1-day fast where we fast from dinner to dinner. Okay. So for example, I do that twice a week. Okay. And so, and I love it. Like, for example, right now we're doing this interview. I know you're in Arizona, so you're in West Coast time, but Eastern time, it's 11:38. And I have not eaten since I finished my meal yesterday at 2:00. And so I haven't eaten anything with calories. I've drank a lot of water, right? I've got my water here. Actually just finished working out. I just did high intensity strength training. I feel great. I don't even feel hungry, right? And so that's an example. I'm going to be doing basically a 24-hour fast today, between yesterday and today. And so that's another intermittent fasting strategy. And then you can do, basically like a dinner on a Saturday night and fast till, let's say, breakfast or lunch on Monday. And that would be, again, another intermittent fasting strategy. Then there's also extended fasting where we go beyond 2 days. Okay. And then there's different level of benefits. And, I don't know if you want to touch on like what the benefits of each are, but, there's a lot of people will do 3-day fasts or 5-day water fasts or 7-day water fasts or something along those lines. And there can be, tremendous benefits, tremendous healing, cleansing benefits from those.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And I have a couple of little follow-up questions. One is people will say, can I have coffee during that period? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, really good question. And so I think everything is always individualized, right? And, I'm a functional medicine practitioner. And so, there's no two people that are exactly the same. And so for me, I can drink black coffee and has no impact on my blood sugar. In fact, black coffee itself, or caffeine itself without, calories, actually stimulates autophagy, stimulates the AMPK genetic pathway, which stimulates this sort of cell cleansing. So it actually can enhance a fast, and it stimulates our body to produce ketones. So it actually can be a great benefit for many people. Now, there are people that take coffee and boom, it shoots up their blood sugar. They have cravings. They feel lightheaded. They feel jittery. They don't respond well. They have a sensitivity to it, and they're poor caffeine metabolizers. So those individuals, it would not be good, obviously, for them to do on a fast. So one way people can do it is, let's say you're doing a fast, you have coffee. Within, a 2-hour period after that, did you have more cravings? You should feel good. Like caffeine should naturally just make you feel good. You shouldn't get this huge high. You should just feel mentally sharp. You should feel satiated, not hungry, and have energy and just be able to do everything you want to do. If you're not having that experience, if you're feeling jittery, if you're having cravings, hunger, things like that, you're probably not responding well. And then you can also test your blood sugar and your blood ketones. And if you're seeing a drop in the blood ketones, a rise in the blood sugar, significant rise, like up over 10 milligrams per deciliter, then you're probably not responding well to it. It'd be better to keep that out.
Okay, great. Thank you. I've also, so maybe we can talk about intermittent versus extended and the different benefits. Another kind of way I've heard it called is time restricted eating, which is maybe on the intermittent side. Is that just kind of terminology? Is it kind of the same thing either way?
Yeah, time restricted feeding would be intermittent fasting. So the fasting, the fasting language, basically, for some individuals that have kind of come up with this language, they believe it's not really a fast until you go 3 days or more without food. And so they call any sort of intermittent fasting time restricted feeding, where you're just eating in a restricted window. Okay. So that would be the difference there. Now, I consider fasting a lifestyle principle, right? And we call it the fasting lifestyle. So on a daily basis, you want to apply some level of intermittent fasting. And the very simplest way to do that is a 12-hour fast overnight, ideally. So between your last meal and your first meal, we call that the simple fast. Now, you may also incorporate some of those other intermittent fasting strategies that we talked about. And that's really helpful for the gut. So the gut lining, those cells turn over quickly. Like we have a new intestinal lining every 3 to 5 days. And so those cells have a shorter lifespan. And so when we restrict our food window to, let's say, an 8-hour window or even less, 6 or 4-hour window, we're going to get a lot of healing to take place in our gut. And, Bridget, you and I both know leaky gut is a significant issue. Gut-related inflammation is, one of the major driving factors in autoimmune conditions, chronic inflammatory conditions. And so by practicing this form of intermittent fasting where we eat our meals in a shortened window, we're going to stimulate more cell turnover and intracellular cleansing within our fast growing cells like our intestinal cells. Okay. And that's, again, really, really important for healing there. So, and then that helps obviously reduce overall inflammation in the body. We also get a rise in human growth hormone. And growth hormone is your quintessential anti-aging hormone. So it actually helps your body build lean body tissue. So a lot of bodybuilders and people that want to have really great physiques practice intermittent fasting. It's counterintuitive, because there's a lot of people with the old model of you got to eat 6-8 meals a day or whatever it is you got to eat, like that. That's what I thought when I was a trainer back in my early 20s. I thought I had to take a protein shake before I went to bed, eat immediately when I woke up in the morning in order to maintain my muscle mass. Now I realize it's all about hormones. And so actually tightening that eating window, eating 1 to 2 meals a day, but eating well when I do eat, and fasting through, for a large period of time throughout the day is actually better for preserving my muscle tissue. And also we get autophagy in the muscle tissue where our body will break down. People will say, well, if I fast, especially for the longer fast, will I lose muscle? And I always tell them, you're going to lose the muscle you actually don't want because your body will break down the older decaying cells. And within every cell, there's organelles. Just like we have organs within our body, there's something called organelles, kind of like the heart in our body. We have, a mitochondria within a cell. We have this endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi apparatus. And so these things are all critical for how the cell functions. And when they start getting beat up from wear and tear, from oxidative stress, the body, this autophagy mechanism that is stimulated through periods of time with without nutrients, our body is so intelligent, it will actually take the nutrients it needs from these older organelles within the cell. It'll break them down, okay? Sends them to a part of the cell called the lysosome, where the enzymes break it down to its minuscule parts. And in those minuscule parts, you've got things like coenzyme Q10. You've got things like DNA, RNA, like all these real key compounds, amino acids, to help rebuild the new cellular structures. So it's really, really powerful. So you actually get stronger, healthier muscle tissue. Your skin gets better. All these types of tissues of our body start to get stronger, more stress resilient. And then you get a really big ramp up of this autophagy when you do a longer extended fast. Okay. So by day 4, day 5 of an extended fast, you're getting huge rises in human growth hormone, autophagy, so that intracellular cleansing. You also have these ketones, right, which is really how your body fuels itself. You break down fatty acids, you turn them into these ketones that can cross the blood-brain barrier and provide a really clean source of fuel. So if we're breaking down sugar, depending on glucose is our only fuel source, glucose is really dirty fuel. We produce a lot of metabolic waste when we're breaking down sugar. When we break down ketones, we don't produce anywhere near as much metabolic waste. And we actually produce significantly more cellular energy. So it's really clean fuel. That's why, once you get beyond this adaptation point in a fast, you just feel so clean and free. Mm-hmm. Anybody that's gone through that has really experienced that. But, I always tell people, just like anything, just like exercise, the first time, if you're metabolically unfit and you go and you exercise, it's going to be uncomfortable. You're probably going to be pretty sore for a few days. And if you judged exercise off that one experience, you would think exercise is terrible for the body. But we understand now that our body has to adapt, that we actually get stronger through the pain. Well, it's kind of the same thing with fasting. If your body is metabolically unflexible, where you can only use glucose as a fuel source because your body just is not able to burn fat for fuel because you haven't trained it to, then it's going to be really uncomfortable when you first get started with a fast. And that's why I always tell people to start small. Do a simple fast. Get really good at 12 hours overnight between your last meal and your first meal. Then bump it up to what we call that brunch fast. Then you might try that 16-8, right? Then you might try the 18-6. Once you get comfortable with each stage, you can kind of progress to the next stage. And Bridget, I also see that some individuals, especially women that have had hormonal issues or thyroid issues, intermittent fasting every day may be challenging for them. So doing it more like twice a week, okay. Monday and a Friday, where they might do a 16-8. So there's all these different unique strategies that can be applied. And that's really the personalization of how to use this great healing tool, fasting, to help benefit the body.
Yeah, I'm really glad you got into the gradual approach because I was going to ask about that. And I want to share my own story, which is similar. Like I was a major sugar burner. I was eating like probably every 2 hours, to be completely honest, eating something. I was just like in that cycle. And even as I got like eating healthier, I think I was still kind of like a sugar burner. I was just like, so I had not the best, like attitude towards fasting at first. Like, I think you have to be careful too that it does, you don't do it to be like, only focused on how your body looks. I think that like, especially like for women, you need to be a little careful with like your goals and what you're doing. But like actually in the last few months, I've been doing more with just intermittent fasting. I did also try like the Prolon fast that we could talk about. And I'm, like you said, I just wasn't adaptable and I just didn't kind of like get the concept enough. But now that I do, I'm much more adaptable. I don't really do extended fasting, but I am doing this intermittent fasting. You probably, I don't really schedule it, but usually like a Saturday morning, I'm doing like a coffee enema and a green drink and like not really, which I guess is not technically fasting, but like I definitely, I have like breaks from eating and I can have longer periods and it feels really good. Like you said, like my energy is good. Like my body mass is really good. It feels a lot better. Like I feel just like, I don't know, like cleaner and like I am thinner, but I'm not, I feel strong, and I feel like, I think it kind of makes you sharper. And I'm sure that's what you experience.
Oh yeah, it's amazing for that. And, to touch on what you were saying, a couple things. Number one is, there are people that shouldn't fast. And one demographic of people that shouldn't fast are people that may have had an eating disorder in the past. I always tell them, if you've had an eating disorder in the past, you shouldn't make the decision to fast. Your psychologist, your best friend, your spouse, a loved one should say, you know what, you're healed enough from this issue to where I think you can do intermittent fasting. I think you can do extended fasting, and have an accountability partner, right? That maybe is doing it with you and supporting you. So I think that's a really, really important thing that people need to know. And so that's key. And then when you talked about doing the green drink, I'm a huge fan of liquid nutrition, right? So if you're afraid to fast, or maybe you didn't have such a great experience, great place to start would be doing some liquid nutrition. Maybe instead of, eating a bowl of oatmeal or, a big thing of eggs in the morning, maybe do a protein shake or a green drink. Okay. And so that alone will take stress off your gut. We always want to be focusing on healing the gut lining every day. It never ends. You never fully heal. You've got to, in a sense, every day you need to be allowing your body to heal and regenerate itself. Every time we eat, we're putting a lot of wear and tear and stress on the gut lining. So by replacing a solid food meal with a liquid meal, it's like, if you have a sprained ankle, getting crutches, you're still able to move around, okay? But you're not putting the wear and tear on the ankle. It's the same thing with the gut. So I think that's huge. Plus, it's kind of a partial fast, and you can still get a lot of benefits from a partial fast. And you mentioned Prolon, which is a 5-day fasting mimicking diet. And this is I love the research that this company is doing. In fact, they just got a huge grant. I can't remember how much money they got from the NIH to study this. But what they showed was that 5 days of calorie restriction, and it's really between 800 and 1100 calories, which is roughly, 40, roughly a third to maybe 50% of our calorie needs for most individuals, over a 5-day period of time stimulates a lot of autophagy. So for some individuals, they don't even necessarily need to fast. You can do like a 5-day green juice fast, for example. This summit's all about cleansing. So I'm sure you're talking about doing green juices, getting chlorophyll in the body. So you could do a green juice fast where you're juicing greens. And yeah, you're getting calories in that way. You're not going to get quite as much autophagy, but you're still getting a significant amount. You're still, especially if you do it 5 days, you're going to get a lot of stem cell development in your body. You still support human growth hormone production. So there's tremendous benefits that you can do with partial fasting. Green juice fasting.
So like the Prolon or some of the other things you described are all of the in the partial fast category.
Yeah, it's a partial fast. Yeah, the Prolon is they actually give you your food in a box, right? Which is
right.
And the food is micronutrient rich, and it is high in healthy fats and high in fiber and low in carbohydrates and protein. Okay, and so it's more of like a plant-based, ketogenic, basically high fat, low protein, low carb sort of nutrition plan.
Yeah, it's not a lot of calories, but it's enough to make you feel satiated somewhat, which is nice. I want to ask you a question about a different cleanse I did once upon a time, and it was kind of, I would say, like low calorie vegan. And on probably day 3 or 4, I had a big, kind of Hertz reaction, like headache, inflammation, and stuff like that, which I guess could happen on a lot of different scenarios. But I wonder your thoughts, do you find people have that with water fasting, or how do we avoid that? Is it unavoidable? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say any sort of unwanted reaction is going to come from several different mechanisms. Number one is hypoglycemia. So if we are dependent upon a steady surplus of sugar in our bloodstream and not good at breaking down our own body fat for fuel, then as that blood sugar drops down, we get basically our body goes into panic mode. And so it's going to release a lot of stress hormone, a lot of high cortisol that will then elevate the blood sugar back up. However, if our brain adrenal connections, HPA, hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, is not communicating well, then we may not be able to produce as much, or we may be able to produce the cortisol, but our receptors for that basically respond to that are blunted. They're downregulated. So we don't get the desired response that we need and elevate the blood sugar the way that we need. And so therefore we have brain cells that will end up dying because they're not getting a fuel source. And that can make us feel really bad, right? Really irritable, have anxiety, brain fog, trouble sleeping. So we can feel really bad from that perspective. So hypoglycemia, huge factor, very stressful on the body. That's why it's important to get keto adapted beforehand.
Okay.
That's a big principle I recommend. Now, there are other mechanisms too. You might be somewhat keto adapted. It may not be a hypoglycemic issue, but you may be deficient electrolytes, okay? And so the way that looks is that when your insulin levels go down, so when you're not eating, insulin, this powerful hormone that takes sugar, puts it into cells, goes down. And insulin is a pro-inflammatory hormone. So when insulin's elevated, it triggers more inflammation in the body. So it's a really great thing to lower insulin, and fasting does that. However, when insulin goes down, there's other things that happen. One of them is you actually excrete more sodium. So we've heard about, like, for example, with high blood pressure, you need to be on a low salt diet. Well, that's not necessarily true. That's only if you're on a high carb diet and you have high insulin. Okay. If your insulin goes down, you actually need more salt. And for a lot of people in the early adaptation process, they're not getting the salt. So I always recommend doing some salts, particularly first two or 3 days, is going to really, really help. Some good Celtic sea salt, Himalayan, Redmond's real salt, some good high quality salt. Just take a pinch, put it on your tongue, and you usually will notice that you feel a lot better. Okay. And really, we're bioelectric beings, meaning that our nervous system runs off of water and electrolytes. We can produce rampant amounts of energy with water and electrolytes. And we really only eat for adaptation and recovery to provide raw materials so that way we can adapt and recover from the stress of the day. So get the water and electrolytes and you'll do great. Now, other things would be gut-induced endotoxemia. So within our gut, we've got, all these different bacteria, yeast, viruses, parasites, all these different microorganisms. And as we're going through a fast, probably not the fast that you were talking about because it was more of a vegan fast. You're probably providing some fuel for them. But if we're going through a water fast, we're not providing fuel for these microorganisms. And so they start to die off. They have short lifespan. They can't go very long without food. They start to die off, and then they're going to release certain endotoxins. Okay. And if those endotoxins are not taken out of the body pretty quickly, then they can get out, especially if we have a leaky gut, they can get out into circulation and cause more oxidative stress in the body. So gut-induced endotoxemia. We also have fat cell-induced endotoxemia. So our fat cells are where we actually store toxins. And so as we're starting to break into our fat cells, for some people, they've stored a tremendous amount of toxicity in there, okay, to protect the body. The body just throws it in the fat cells, so it's more dormant. The toxins are more dormant. And so as the fat cells are broken down and used for fuel, now some of these toxins get out in circulation. And if our body isn't able to bind and remove those, or maybe our liver's not functioning as well, kidneys, then we can also have more oxidative stress and more symptoms associated with that. So those are the different mechanisms. And, there are supplements that can really help people as they're going through a fast. We talked about just taking salt.
Yeah. Okay.
There are like different binding agents that can get into circulation. Like I use one called biotoxin binder when people are having some of those types of symptoms. That can be really helpful. There's molecular hydrogen, which is a really powerful antioxidant that can easily get right into the cell and prevent against oxidative stress. So a lot of people use molecular hydrogen for that. Glutathione boosting agents like acetylated glutathione can be really helpful for individuals as they're dealing with symptoms like this. And, if you're not moving your bowels, that's a major issue. A lot of times people, when they start fasting, when we eat, the act of chewing itself stimulates peristalsis, the muscle activity in the gut. And so when we stop eating, oftentimes for some people, they get really slowed down activity in their gut. So using different things, whether it's coffee enema, like you were talking about, or I'll use like an oxygen-based colon cleanser, something called oxy powder, to help people move their bowels, if they're having that issue. when they're fasting. So all those things can be helpful. With blood sugar, you can take exogenous ketones. If you're not already keto adapted, taking some exogenous ketones teaches the body that, hey, there's a different fuel source available. Before the body gets good at producing these ketones, there's a different fuel source available to the brain. The brain uses ketones well, right? It loves using ketones for energy. So getting some of those in there can really help reduce any sort of hypoglycemic type reaction as you're either time restricted feeding or doing more of an extended fast, a great adaptation principle. And, just in general, just getting your body to be more metabolically flexible and more keto fat adapted or keto adapted before you do an extended fast is always really helpful for reducing those kind of unwanted symptoms.
That was an awesome list of tips. Thank you so much. Yeah, I feel like the cleanse I was on, I was getting low blood sugar and I was losing fat that I probably couldn't keep up with detox wise. So that helps kind of clarify some things for me. You mentioned a couple supplements and one of our sponsors sells those, which microbe formulas. So that's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
That's awesome.
I know Jay and Todd and use their products. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. And Donna Gates was on and talked a little bit about dealing with constipation if that's an issue you're dealing with. I've never taken exogenous ketones, but I'm curious about it. So that's a fun tip as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It can be really, really helpful. I've seen a lot of people have a great fasting experience using that. Okay, now ultimately I'd love to be able to get them to where they don't need it. Okay.
Right.
But it could be a bridge, it's a great bridge to help people. And for me, I'm really passionate about people having a good experience when they start fasting. Right. I don't think anybody we love food so much. When we eat, we stimulate dopamine. We get this great feel-good experience. You don't quite get that dopamine hit when you drink water. You know what I mean? It's like, you just don't, it just doesn't, it's not as good, right? So we're all emotionally addicted to eating, and, having an emotional high when you eat it, I think is a great thing. I think it's a beautiful thing. As you start to fast, when you first do it, it can feel like you're being deprived. And I think that's one of the big mistakes people make. And so doing some different things to help them have a little bit more comfortable experience can be huge and helpful. And it's like, it's paradigm shifting when people actually do a fast, even time restricted feeding, and they don't die and they feel good. And they're like, wow, I just did that. First time I did it, I was like, this is amazing. It was paradigm shift.
Yeah. Even just like you said, starting with usually in our community, I do some lead, I guess you would say partial fasts.
Yeah.
And the results we get are fantastic and people feel so good about it. And I tell you, just flexing that muscle to try something new, not just eat everything you see, which is frankly what most people are doing in our culture.
Right.
It's so healthy and just so good for you. In ours, there is more cooking, but even practicing cooking is really important. Learning how to make a good smoothie is really important. Then maybe you graduate to some of these other fasts or do the longer time period, and you're going to feel so good in your body. So I love it. We're kind of wrapping up here. Any other benefits we didn't hit that you want to mention?
Well, with extended fasting, you're going to stimulate stem cells as well.
Okay.
Stem cells are these embryonic cells, right? And so we can stem cell treatments are the future of medicine, right? For rebuilding joints. So many people are getting surgeries. We could probably reduce the surgery, hip surgeries, knee surgeries. We could probably reduce that by 90% with stem cell treatments. Now, stem cell treatments are quite expensive. You can actually give yourself your own stem cell treatments by doing regular, periodic, extended fasts. By day 4, day 5, you start to really ramp up these stem cells. And so your body starts to actually rebuild all this different tissue. And it's quite amazing. And so what I'll tell people to do is, especially if you're older, you've got some really damaged joints or organ systems in your body. Usually what I'll do is if you're overweight, and you're really motivated, you get yourself keto adapted, you're doing intermittent fasting to the point where you can do a one meal a day, and that's not an issue, right? You're not hungry. For me, no problem. I can easily do 1 meal a day, no issue. When I eat, of course, I eat really well, right? I eat a lot of food. And I eat till I'm full. That's always a key principle there. But you get yourself to where you're metabolically flexible to that point. And then what you do is, and this is for an overweight individual, I would have them do a 5-day fast. Okay. Ideally water fast, but they could also do, partial fast like a Prolon, especially if they're taking medications. So medications you have to be eating with, and so that way you can take those with the Prolon 5-day fasting mimicking diet. You do that every month. Okay. You do intermittent fasting on a regular basis, daily basis, and then you do 5-day fast every month.
Once a month.
Or,
okay.
yeah, if you're like optimal weight, you might do it once every 2 months. If you're underweight, like you or I, okay, like in general, like I'm like 8% body fat, you might do it like once every 6 months, 3 to 6 months or something like that. So that way you have ample time to recover from it. Okay. And the other principle is always making sure that when you eat well. You're not trying to when you are eating, you're not trying to restrict calories. So you have to have a differential between fasting time and feasting time. Like when I eat, you'd be amazed at how much food I actually eat. Okay. I eat a lot of food. And so,
like Michael Phelps with the
yeah. I mean, I eat healthy food, right? But,
right.
But I do eat a lot of food. And it's like this feast famine cycling is really key for our hormones, really key for intracellular messages. So basically telling the body, okay, food is prevalent. I can activate thyroid hormone. I can stimulate sex hormones. Because what happens is if you're fasting all the time and under eating, you're going to get a huge reduction in sex hormone production, thyroid hormone production, because your body basically is saying, I need to be so efficient. I can't try to reproduce. I'm just going to go into hibernation mode. Right. So you don't want to do that. So
yeah, I want to stop there for a second. My ladies listening, my men too, but I got a lot of ladies please listen to that. Like, this isn't about fasting and then not eating much and all that. Like, no. So listen to what he says. Pig out Michael Phelps style.
Yeah.
When you are,
if you're like, hey, if I try to eat a big meal, I get sick, then like in your eating window, eat 3 times or something. You know what I mean? Eat like every 2 hours for 6 or 8 hours or whatever it is. Right. So, but just, you try to differentiate. Okay, this is my eating window. This is my fasting window. And, you do your best to stay in that.
Okay.
And during your fasting window, you hydrate your body really well. Every time you think you need food, drink water, maybe even take a pinch of salt. Okay. And you'll notice, wow, I can go longer than I thought without food. Feel better.
Awesome. You gave so many details here. Thank you so much. I want to point out to our listeners and viewers, this is a good reason to buy the summit. Like, some of these talks are very detailed, and just all this information could really get you started. Dr. Jaggers, I'm sure you have a ton more resources on your webpage. Can you tell us what people can find there and what you do and what's the name of that URL?
Yeah, you just go to drjackers.com. We've got, tremendous amount of content on there on a wide variety of topics. Fasting is, something obviously you can tell from this interview I'm really passionate about. I also have a great Facebook group. It's the Fasting Transformation Experience Facebook group, where I do a monthly Q&A on there. And there's so many, we have thousands of people on there that can help support you in your time-restricted feeding or fasting journey. And if this is something you're interested in, I highly recommend that. And you can also check out the articles, of course, on my website that have to do with fasting, give you all the info and details.
Well, thank you again. That was very enlightening for me, and I'm gonna try some new things based on what you said. So thanks for your time and expertise.
Thanks so much, Bridget. Really appreciate being on the summit, and wishing you all the best with this.